I'm the founder of A Ball for All, and when we distribute for free, we make the game for everybody.
We donated 750 footballs that were designed for the visually impaired.
Every child, every person who was on the field has received the ball.
What an event like this does to these special kids is that it makes them feel great, appreciated, loved, and wanted.
We were standing there and he said, "This is mine?" "Yes, this is yours." "I can keep it?" "Yes, you can keep it." And then he said, "Forever?" We said, "Yes, forever."
We are very excited because now the learners who are visually impaired have got something, some balls to be playing during their free time.
They can play and formulate teams together, all the blind children. But in blind football, they need to have goalkeepers who are sighted.
Their skills will really be improved, and even their learning capacity will really improve.
It gives them a bit more dignity, gets them to experience life.
The goal is to create a football league for the visually impaired that could hopefully one day lead to an All-Africa Cup in which visually impaired children from all over this continent come together, supported by Lions Clubs and the Foundation.
So thank you very much, Lions.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your patience this afternoon. I know we had a little technical issue with respect to the link, and we're sorting that out shortly. The district governor has actually assisted to extend his help in terms of posting it again on the announcements chart. So persons should be shortly in possession. In the event anybody else needs it, it would be the link. There is a hyperlink attached to the flyer. You could probably just click on that and you would get through immediately. Let me welcome everybody this afternoon. Let me first of all thank Lion Wendy as usual. I will do a thanks at the beginning for her usual assistance in ensuring that we have a platform where we could have conversations as Lions. And as such, I want to welcome everybody for taking the time out this afternoon to come and have a conversation with respect to leading with emotional intelligence. It is not something that is new to us per se, but it is something that we have to pay careful attention to as we move forward. It is something that we should not forget, ideally. And so when we speak of emotional intelligence, one may have many questions as to what it is, what is the importance, and how we use it within our leadership framework. And so this afternoon, we're going to have that conversation. I've invited two persons who are professionals in their own right, for us to look at how we as Lions or as leaders can look at the notion of emotional intelligence, and we could see how best we could work it into our mandate as Lions. What is important for us is to always remember that in this movement, leadership normally takes the fore. And we normally speak of family, we speak of respect, we speak of being considerate to one another. And sometimes along the way, we forget those ideals and those notions, and we move away from it with the hope that we will still be able to provide that level of service to the less fortunate. And as such, we need to take some time to be a little bit introspective and to look at ourselves to how best we could look at the notion of emotional intelligence. Another organization to which I belong to, at one point in time, somebody made the comment that there is a phrase which goes, organizational culture, it's strategy for breakfast. And that is very instructive in that no matter what we do as Lions, no matter what strategic plans we have, no matter which district governor we have, or which region chair or zone chair or president we have with their plans, if we do not take a step back and look at what we have and what we offer as Lions and Leos, in terms of who we are, what we are to each other, if we do not put those things in proper context, those strategic plans can fall along the way, and our goals as Lions and Leos can be compromised. And so this afternoon, I want to welcome two persons who will be introduced. First of all, Ms. Francisca Plummer will be introduced by Lion Keisha, and Mr. Clive Avril will be introduced by Lion and Fenner. So without further ado, I would invite Lion Keisha to introduce Francisca Plummer. Lion Keisha.
Good evening, Lions. Over the years, Ms. Francesca Plummer has been fulfilling her lifelong vision of supporting individuals and couples facilitate self-understanding, change, and renewal through psychoeducation, therapeutic intervention, and mental health consultancy. She holds a bachelor's degree from University College London, a master's degree in psychotherapy and counseling from City University London, as well as a graduate certificate in advanced counseling from University of Lynchburg. She's a licensed by the Allied Health Council of St. Lucia and accredited by the British Association of Counseling and Psychotherapy. Ms. Plummer has 20 years clinical experience working clinically across diverse populations, as well as in a variety of settings, including employee assistance, mental health, substance abuse, and college counseling. Over the years, Ms. Plummer has also served as a consultant to regional governments in the area of mental health and psychological programming and curricula. She facilitates a broad range of mental health training locally and regionally and lectures part-time in a range of liberal arts and psychology courses. She founded and coordinates the Cancer Support Group, Pillars of Hope. This is the support group of the St. Lucia Cancer Society.
Thank you very much, Lion Keisha. Lion Dr. Ann, if you would.
Good evening, fellow Lions. And I don't know if there are any Leos here. Just give me a minute to bring this up. It is my pleasure to introduce to the attendees Clive Avril. Mr. Avril's approach to coaching builds on strengths. He sees the coachee as being strong, and his role is to help them build on their strengths to achieve their desired outcomes. He tries to understand the coachee's situation through a series of structured conversation tailored to their individual needs. It is in this view that the key to sustained success is about supporting the individual to get what they want without telling them what to do or doing it for them. Experience. Clive has been coaching for the best part of 2 decades. He holds a degree and a postgraduate degree in psychology and a postgraduate diploma in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, counseling, and psychodynamic approaches. He has a certificate in coaching from the Performance Coach, Portsmouth University Business School, and an ILM Level 7 in executive coaching and mentoring with Management Futures. A former graduate member of the British Psychological Society and an accredited ACC member of the International Coach Federation. Clive's depth of experience comes from working with chief executives, board members, and senior executives from a broad range of public and private sector organizations. He has developed and is currently delivering training in the following areas: health coaching to healthcare professionals, career coaching to individuals in search of new challenges, leadership coaching to managers and aspiring leaders, interview skills training to groups and on a one-to-one basis. He's currently involved in helping organizations embed coaching in their current working practices. Clive may be reached at email address Avril, that's CLIVEAVRIL @msn.com, or mobile phone 44797-381-4152.
Thank you very much, Lion Dr. Ann. Without further ado, I'm not sure if the Lion District Governor is on yet. Okay, I will check again. Without further ado, Ms. Plummer, I would like to hand over to you. I will stop sharing my screen. I guess between yourself and Clive, you decide who goes first.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. It's always been a pleasure to serve Lions Clubs here in St. Lucia, and I know that we have lots of members from around the region. So a great pleasure for myself. I'm sure also for Clive, he'll speak for himself. So this evening, we do have a plan. We will be both covering the area of emotional intelligence. Our plan is to cover two aspects of it. So I will be looking at self-awareness, and you will get to understand a little bit more what that means. And Clive will be looking at the element of leading as it pertains to relationship with others. So that's our plan for this evening. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get going. Okay. I hope you can see that okay. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll jump right in. Oftentimes when we think about intelligence, obviously the thing that comes to mind for most people is what is typically referred to as IQ, which is intellectual intelligence. And so typically when we say that people are smart or not smart, we refer to that. And this is what we often think really helps us succeed in everyday life within different sectors. It is an important aspect of our mind. It includes a lot of cognitive abilities, such as our ability to handle logic, to plan, to problem solve, etc., to adapt, abstract thinking, etc., which are really critical. However, there are other important components that contribute to success as well. And so this evening, we're going to talk a little bit more about these adaptive, social, and emotional capabilities in the sense of emotional intelligence. So we consider emotional intelligence to be actually really critical to success in both personal and professional relationships. So tonight, our goal for you is that you would understand what emotional intelligence means. Yeah. We also look at the components of that. We look at how you develop that emotional intelligence. And for me, that's a really important aspect of the conversation. As Lion Rowan has already mentioned, I know some of you would have been exposed to this. I would see tonight, this evening, as a reminder of what you can do if you don't already practice it, how you can get back on track in terms of building that muscle. So I want to engage you a bit, if you would, and I would ask maybe if at least one person in the group can respond a bit to the statements on the screen. Tell me what you think. So the first statement says, emotional intelligence, EI, is something you are born with and cannot change. Emotional intelligence is something you are born with and cannot change. How do you feel about that statement? What comes to mind? Nia K, sorry, Thompson. I see your hand.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. So I believe that is false. Emotional intelligence is something that you develop over time because you gradually learn different things and you start to incorporate those things into your schema, and then you start to change or you develop as you mature, and then you put those things into your life, and then you can have more emotional intelligence essentially.
Excellent. I saw also a few comments in the chat as well. I think, yeah, social surroundings influence it. Some people are saying it's false. Absolutely. I think you're right on track. Some people think EI is something you're born with and you cannot change. And we assume that people are naturally more emotionally intelligent than others. However, we know that that is not true. Yeah, it is a set of skills that you can learn and you can develop through practice, through feedback and reflection. And that's actually how most people develop emotional intelligence. So you can enhance your EI, by becoming more aware of your emotions and how they affect your behavior, basically by learning to regulate your emotions and express them appropriately, etc. All right, so that's fantastic. Let's go to the next one. I hope you can see that. Oops. Can you see that statement? EI is just a soft skill. Maybe we have some comments. Okay, so we have Michelle saying, no, it's not a soft skill. What would you consider it to be? Yeah. Do we have any takers here? Well, how do you see this? Can we consider emotional intelligence a soft skill? You might wonder why do we even look at these statements? One of them is that these are common things that float around. Some people believe these things. So one of the things also in terms of becoming emotionally intelligent is understanding what you believe about things. And so we are talking about emotional intelligence. It helps us to understand what do you actually believe around this concept. Whatever you think you know about it right this minute, you probably have some ideas or impressions of what it is. Okay, so that's part also of why I'm looking at these statements with you. Okay, and so we have Peter Gay. I think it is in a way you have to think and emphasize with people. I'll say it is a soft skill. All right, so let's look at what do we think about that? When we think of soft skills and the kind of value we attach to that is that it's somehow less important or valuable than hard skills, such as technical knowledge, expertise, or qualifications. And that's not true either. EI is not really a soft skill. It's actually a core skill that complements or enhances your hard skills. So it becomes a skill that's actually really important, it's necessary, and you need it really for competitive advantage. It's not like a nice to have thing, but it's actually a must-have skill with any leader who wants to succeed and to thrive as well. Yeah. We go down quickly. EI is all about being nice. I wonder what you say to that. If we smile and be nice and fake it, is that being emotionally intelligent? Thank you, Olive Bean. I think you said nope. Excellent for the feedback in the chat. No, it's not. You know, another myth is that EI means being nice to everyone, avoiding conflict and suppressing your negative emotions, and which is absolutely not true. It's not about being fake or passive. It's not about being putting on a front or being really good at it. That's not what we're talking about. It's about being authentic. It's about being assertive. It means being able to recognize and respect the emotions of others. It's about understanding our own emotions and being genuine and authentic with how we respond to that. Yeah, it means standing up for your boundaries, etc. So we're not just trying to be nice. Yeah, it means that we have to handle conflict constructively as well, not by avoiding it or escalating it, but by finding common ground, finding solutions as well.
Nia K had her hand up.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Clive.
So.
Nia?
Well, you said a lot of what I was going to say because I was going to agree with you that it's not just about being nice, it's about being able to emotionally regulate and being aware of your emotions and evaluating those emotions and knowing when to use those emotions and being self-aware and having good self-management skills. But you covered that already.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We quickly go down. EI is about just showing your emotions, i.e., some people are like, I just put it all out there. Like I say what I feel, like it's up to them. Like, do you believe that that's how it should be? That we just say what we want, how we want, whenever. And that means we're being emotionally intelligent. Yeah. Anybody on that one? So I think again, Lionia, is it? Addressed that in a way as well. It's being able to manage your emotions. So a critical part of being emotionally intelligent is being able to be self-aware. That means you acknowledge what your emotions are, you understand them. But the other critical part of being emotionally intelligent is that you are able to manage your emotions. So we are not advocating this kind of wild, let's just express everything we feel in a raw, unfiltered way, because we are expressing ourselves. Okay. We'll go into that a little bit more.
Nia is a Leo, so just so that we correct it, she wants you to know that because she will be speaking more later on. So we could always say Leo Nia when we address her. She's not finished talking yet, so that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Leo, Nia. Okay, and I think the last statement for us, women are better at EI than men. What do you say to that? Peter Gay says no. Any other person?
Nia
I'm
has
not.
hand up.
I like that. Samantha says, I'm not, LOL. I don't think so. That's an interesting response, I think, in the chat. So interestingly, what we know so far is that women tend to be a bit better, generally speaking, and I want to clarify exactly what I mean in terms of empathy. Men, on the other hand, tend to be better on the self-management of emotions. But interestingly, when you look at leadership and the people who are really effective at high levels of leadership, there's very little difference in terms of their emotional intelligence. So that's an interesting thing for us to think about. Okay, we know that socially women would be, kind of trained, so to speak, to be more empathetic, to be more social, and that kind of presents itself. Men are really kind of raised in a way or socialized to be a little bit more controlled. So that appears here, but in terms of leadership, you tend to see very little difference in terms of emotional intelligence. So we go down a little bit. EI is a one-size-fits-all concept, and I'll speak a little bit to that. It isn't. When we think about emotional intelligence, actually, not one size doesn't work universally. It's a context-specific and culture-sensitive concept. It means that different situations and people may require different levels and types of emotional intelligence. So it's not about following a set of rules or formulas per se, but about being aware and responsive to the cues, to the expectations of the environment, etc. So there is context specificity in there as well. Yeah, it is about being able to adjust to different settings, scenarios, and audiences as well. Okay, so I see Lion Gloria says nothing to do with gender. Yes, I agree. So I like that because all of us can then foster emotional intelligence. It doesn't belong to a particular gender, which is a fantastic point. So thank you for your engagement on that. When we think about emotional intelligence, what are we really talking about? And I know a lot of you probably are really familiar with the term, but it's also helpful for all of us to be on the same page. When we talk about emotional intelligence, we're looking at the ability to both manage our emotions and to understand the emotions of other people around us. There are a lot of definitions of emotional intelligence out there, so you may be seeing slightly different things. They should all cover these two elements, that's self-awareness and self-management, and the aspect of dealing with the other. This term emotional intelligence was coined way back in 1990 by Mayer and Salovey and popularized. You might have heard of the psychologist Daniel Goleman. He's the one who really popularized the idea of emotional intelligence. So one of the things I want you to pay attention here is that it's very hard to manage the emotions of other people. You cannot control how someone else feels or how they behave. What you can do is to identify the emotions behind their behavior or what you think they are, and that can help you to better understand where they are coming from and how to best interact with them. So we don't talk about managing other people's emotions. We can understand it and we can use that information to help us. One thing we do know is that emotional intelligence is the glue that can hold relationships together in the long run, whether that be personal or professional. And of course, as we said earlier, emotional intelligence can be learned at any age. So you can grow your competency. It's not easy or quick, I have to say, and we'll talk about that, but it does take perseverance in the process and commitment to improvement, however entirely possible. I want to bring us into the context of leadership, which is what we are doing here today. Leaders set the tone. Why is this important, you would ask? Leaders basically set the tone of an organization. So if our leaders are healthy, they're strong, they're emotionally intelligent, they are able to really lead the organization in a much healthier way. When we know from the literature and research that when people are leaders are emotionally intelligent, their communication techniques can influence team dynamics in a positive way. Yeah, we also know that having emotional intelligence among leaders fosters better decision making. It fosters stronger bonds among team members, which really helps to drive organizations forward. And lastly, people feel better equipped to navigate workplace challenges when they are emotionally intelligent. Leadership, of course, is very much the art of getting work done well through people. You're trying to motivate, you're trying to inspire people to move in the direction and the vision that the organization wants. So emotional intelligence is something that we consider to be non-negotiable quality for a leader. Therefore, a leader must work on their emotional intelligence with the same dedication as any other technical or communication skill. Really important. Yeah. So let's take a closer look as to the components of emotional intelligence. As I mentioned already, we'll be looking at two elements, the self element and dealing with other people. So when we look at self-awareness, self-management, these are two critical of the four components of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness really refers to understanding what we feel, why we feel it, what's the basis of it, and what we can do. Self-management allows us to handle these emotions and to not be reactive and to basically escalate situations. Clive, as I said, will be looking at the empathy, social awareness, and relationship management aspect of emotional intelligence. All of these obvious. Somebody wants to say something? No. All of the, yes. Hello? Okay. All right, so all of these are interconnected, as you probably can tell here, and they would depend and they influence each other. So we'll definitely you'll see the overlap as we speak this evening as well. So jump right into, for me, the self-awareness. Obviously, it's the thing that I do day in and day out. I work as a therapist, I work clinically, I work as well with lots of organizations here in St. Lucia. So I have the benefit of working with leaders in these organizations as well as employees as well. And we understand, and I will share maybe a few examples of the work I do with them in terms of how self-awareness plays a part. Self-awareness is really the foundation of emotional intelligence. So I don't know if it seems intuitive to everyone here, because when we think about emotional intelligence, we may sometimes think about understanding other people. But actually, one of the things that we know is critical and is foundational for emotional intelligence is understanding ourselves, which is at the core of everything. It's one of the hardest things I think people can do. And one thing we know for sure is that the majority of people are not self-aware. So I hope we can talk a little bit more about that. So some of the research suggests to us that 95% of people who think they are aware, only 10 to 15% of these actually are. So, and so that means in any group setting, organization, etc., to which we belong, chances are we may be part of it, but also we are likely to be working with persons who are not that self-aware. And you may wonder, but why? Why is that? Partly, we don't have a value on self-awareness. And I think that's a big issue for many of us. So when we talk about self-awareness, we're talking about being able to identify how we feel, what those feelings mean, like I said, and how those emotions impact on our behavior and in turn that of other people. If you notice here, it does speak to how our emotions, our behavior can impact on other people because we are intersubjective beings. What we are doing in any context will influence the people around us. It doesn't mean it determines their behavior, but it will influence how they are, their reactions as well. Okay, so important for us to realize. We go down. When we think about self-awareness, there are three aspects of that we want to look at if we want to really focus on developing our self-awareness as an individual. That emotion self-awareness, which really is about focusing really on what our emotions are, understanding what we feel. That is not intuitive for most people. So taking time out to stop, to be quiet, and to allow our emotions to come through so that we can sense what that emotion is, we can feel it, we can acknowledge it, we can name it. And that alone already, through what we know about emotional intelligence, actually helps us to be able to manage to some extent or begin to manage that emotion. Just the process of identifying and naming it already kind of discharges some of the energy around emotions. So taking that time out to do that is important. Another important aspect of that emotion self-awareness is being able to accept how we feel. Yeah, not only identify it, but that it's okay that we feel that way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to act on how we feel or do a specific thing based on how we feel. We can reflect on why the emotion is showing up in that moment, what it means for us, what could its purpose be? Because we don't often think about what emotions are telling us, but actually what we know is that emotions are really directive. They can really help. They offer us a lot of information as to what we're thinking, feeling, what's going on for us. And they can help us to really understand who we are. Yeah. So we want to reflect really when we think about the emotion self-awareness part, think about the usefulness of the response we have in, and what is the takeaway that we have from that as well. In terms of developing self-awareness, we want to look at self-assessment. That is something, again, you have to be intentional about. It's not something I think people do intuitively. It's something you have to commit to, especially as leaders. So completing self-assessment exercises like personality inventory, values determination, understanding what your personal mission and vision is, looking at your leadership style, understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are. And you can use various standardized tools to help you with that. You can use journaling also to help you with that. You can seek feedback from your group members here. You can seek feedback from your loved ones, as well as people you interact with on a general basis. So there are different ways in which we can get that, do that self-assessment and practice. And that is something that could be done over time as well. All right, and the self-confidence part, understanding, I guess, where your confidence is in terms of, because what we notice is that some people do rise up, they do very well, they are business owners, they are lions, they are serving, they are very involved. But when you go behind that sometimes, what you see is that some of the challenges that lots of people experience, the lack of worthiness, the lack of self-esteem, all of that are things that can also impact people who serve. So I just want to put that up there and to understand that these are things that you may have to heal as an individual, all of us, and so that you can become your cheerleader. And that's what really self-confidence is about, that you can really cheer yourself on. Well, I hope, again, we'll come back to some of these things here. I wanted to put in some personal reflection questions. I know that we won't answer them this evening, but I hope maybe you make a note of them for yourself and you can answer that for yourself. You know, again, I want to foster with you that critical, a foundational part of emotional intelligence is that self-awareness piece. And that, of course, requires you as a lion to understand certain things about yourself. I hope most of you here would have already engaged in an exercise like that. For example, where does your desire to help come from? Yeah. What are your core beliefs about helping? You know, what do I get out of helping others? What makes me want to be part of a lion movement? And how do I take care of myself as a lion and a leader within that movement? Really critical, I think, that you answer these and the questions related to that. And you may say, but why? Most people would join, I think, a movement like you, a community-based movement, because they feel they want to give back, they want to help. But that's really complex, I think, for many people. And sometimes we don't understand really what's behind our helping desires. It's really helpful for us to really go behind that a little bit and really understand, distill, I think, at the core what we mean for that. Sometimes what happens with movements, community-based movements, is that we are kind of taught to give, to help others, to be really outward looking and to put others first, that makes you a good person. But in the process of doing that, we kind of neglect ourselves, our well-being, and we forget that without being well ourselves, it's really hard to effectively help other people. Okay. I also want to think about self-awareness in terms of the Lions Club as a movement and your district. I think that's 60B as a group. I think, again, Lion Ron mentioned about the importance of looking in, really a critical thing. And I have some reflection questions here, I think, that could be helpful. You know, do you understand what drives people to join your movement today? That could change, of course, over time. I'm sure you've seen some changes over time. Are you aligned to your goals and purposes as before? Are you taking time to understand the needs of the persons you're trying to serve? Like, really? Because sometimes one of the things I notice in a briefing is that, you know, with some of the language I thought was interesting, talking about less fortunate people. And that, of course, it immediately puts a hierarchy in terms of us and them. So just something to think about, you know, how as a group, as a Lion movement, are you perceived in the community that you're trying to serve? Going down as well, are you looking after your membership while you are trying to help other people? I think in my 20 years of practice, one of the things that strikes me every time is how a lot of people in caring professions, they kind of forget that their immediate environment needs caring, their families, their loved ones, the people right there with them. And I'm putting this out there as well to the Lions Club. You know, for example, are there people in your own movement who would meet your definition of needy? Are you attentive to that? Are you taking care of yourselves and really paying attention to that as well? So, yeah, food for thought. I want to jump, I think, into, so once we understand what we feel, understand what our thoughts are doing, what our emotions are doing. What we want to do now is to manage that. That's the other element of self-management in terms of emotional intelligence. So self-management here speaks to the way you respond to what you think or feel. Yeah? So once you've identified what you are feeling, what you are thinking, how do you manage that? Because what we are not doing is just being impulsive with it. Yeah, we are not encouraging that kind of impulsive reaction. There is a gap between what you feel and your response. So in that space, it actually offers us the opportunity to respond, and that's where your superpower is. So you can control how you respond because you are able to identify what you think, what you feel, where that's coming from, and you are now able to step back and really think about how you can manage, especially your distressing emotions. We don't want those emotions to distress or control us. So self-management, again, refers to managing your emotions, particularly in stressful situations or where you have intensely distressing emotions. So they're not being driven by impulse. Yeah? Both when you are alone and when you're with others. I thought it's important to do that. Again, I see a lot of people in my practice. Some of them are very successful, very involved in the community, but not really healthy emotionally. So they will struggle on their own. They struggle quietly. They struggle with depression, with anxiety, at the same time that they are pillars of success in the society. And they may engage in various types of self-harming behavior behind the curtain. So at night, sometimes they would disclose to me, they go home and drink lots. So nobody knows that because it doesn't affect their day-to-day lives, but that's how they try to manage. Some people will cut themselves. People harm themselves in lots of other risky ways. So just thinking about that self-management is not just about managing your external appearance and how you seem to other people and the world, but fully managing yourself so that you are in control of how you are and you can actually deal with the emotions you have in a healthy way. Okay, so that's where the real self-control comes in. So every emotion has a function and every emotion gives us information. The more you learn that and the more you learn how to pay attention to that and attune to that is the more information you're going to have to be empowered to manage what you're doing. Okay. So how do we foster that self-management? Really important. So here again, we want to emphasize the importance of regular self-reflection. This is an ongoing thing. It's not like a one-time thing you do and you stop. I'm a therapist 20 years, and it's something I continue to have to engage in all the time. I do that in various ways, through continuous therapy, coaching, supervision, journaling, etc., mindfulness practice. So these are some of the things that help. But it's something that you would want to be intentional about, and a practice that you want to adopt through your life, okay, especially in leadership. When you're experiencing distress and emotion, you can think of breathing. Breathing is a powerful little technique right there. I really believe in it. And it can shift you so much from being responsive, reactive, especially when you have an intense emotions, to being, to going into your parasympathetic response, which is more your rest and relaxation response. So when we are responsive and reacting and intense and just being kind of regulated, we are probably in our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response system. But we want to shift ourselves into our rest and relaxation system. So focus on the breath. The breath is always there for you, and it's a powerful tool. Just a few deep breaths in and out in a situation where you are having an intense reaction to a moment can really help a lot. So again, work on regularity of self-care. I don't know if this follows for everyone here, and I would love to have a discussion after, but I know a lot of people who care for others, they often neglect themselves. They are not practicing effective self-care. And it's a challenge. I think it was also a challenge for me. So there's absolutely no judgment here. I think I remember a day back, maybe in 2018, I remember this specifically, where I had to reckon with my own need to practice some of this in a more holistic way, because I was working a lot, stretching myself thin, trying to meet the needs of everybody and trying to be available to as many people who wanted to. And I was literally running myself ragged. I was really sick. I was in the doctor's office all the time, just really sick. And I remember that year particularly well, because in that year I had to reckon with that self-care is really important as a carer, as a professional carer. Practicing activities that counter the stress that I experience personally from talking to people, from absorbing all of the stuff that I hear day in and day out was really important. So that marked a big shift for me. And I've been really a lot better, a lot more effective in maintaining that self-care now, because I had to learn, like many carers have to learn, that you have to actually make this a priority for yourself and to understand. So there has to be a mindset shift too, in terms of making this really important and making it first in, yeah? All right, so if we go down, practicing mindfulness daily, is also really helpful. Policing your thoughts, understanding what you're thinking about, because these are things people don't really see, but sometimes our thoughts are not really healthy. So you want to see, what are you thinking about? What are you telling yourself on a daily basis? What we know from neuro psychology is that our mind doesn't distinguish what you're telling it, whether it's true or not, but it believes it. So it would act also on what it thinks you want based on what you're feeding it. So we want to police our thoughts. We want to ensure that we are telling ourselves things that are healthy. And if we are going to lie to ourselves, there's a particular theorist that says, if you're going to lie to yourself, tell yourself a good lie, one that will help you. I really like that idea and concept as well. Okay, and of course, if you do need professional support, sometimes we have intense emotions that come from previous life experience, from traumatic experiences, and things that we may not even consider that they were really traumatic, but they do impact on us. If you have a query, if you're not sure, if you think you want to talk about it, it may be helpful to really bring that forward to someone who can help you to really sift through that. Yeah, so I want us to end this portion of the presentation by saying to you that managing yourself is really at the heart of being an effective lion. And for those in leadership within the movement, really critical for effective movement, leadership as well. There are a lot of small things you can do on a regular basis that are going to help you to develop and build that emotional intelligence kind of muscle. And of course, like life, like everything else, EI is a work in progress. It's not a one-stop thing that you do for 1 week or one session and you stop here. It's something that you have to make a practice in your everyday life. So practicing self-awareness, self-management is imperative for healthy leadership. Get that support if you actually do need that to help you to build that self-awareness muscle, or actually just to be able to get that going. All right, so this is it for me for now. Of course, I look forward to the discussion in a bit. I'm going to hand over to Clive, who is going to take us forward.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that okay? I mean, what an impressive presentation. I have to follow this now, so people bear with me. I see you've got quite a few people on there, 99 people, and what I'd like really is for a lot of interaction in this conversation, because we had a conversation about emotional intelligence, and one of the things I think that brings it to life is when people step in and have a conversation about it. So please do stop me at any point if there's a question you want to ask, and certainly I'll engage you in that way. It makes it a little bit more dynamic and more alive. So I'll try to share my screen in a minute, and I'll see how successful I am at doing this. Just 1 second. One. Okay. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Clive, go ahead. Let's see.
Okay, just 1 second now. And you can just only see my screen, yeah? Not anything else.
Yeah, just your screen, Clive.
Brilliant. That's good. I was a bit concerned about that. Okay, so we've had a good conversation about emotional intelligence, and Francisca has very effectively encapsulated what it is. And it's about you, the individual, and how you navigate the different emotions within yourself and within your environment, and make the best decisions based on how you operate in that sometimes very difficult space. So here with me, it's about, oh, sorry, I moved on. Sorry. The first thing I'd like to say is that this is a tester session, and it's not meant, you're not meant to, at the end of it, become an expert in emotional intelligence, but I know that a number of you, very experienced people, would have come across that before. And let me just see if I can move my screen, because it's stopping me seeing my notes. Just 1 second. Can you see me? Can you see my screen still? Hello?
Yes, we can, Clive.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So as I said, this is a tester session. The intention here really is to make you, is not to make you an expert, but to make you curious as to how does that, the idea of emotional intelligence connect with me as an individual, and how can I use it to my best advantage and operate in a space where the people around me can get the best out of themselves, and not you don't become the reason why people don't function in a space, especially in the work environment. Managers sometimes can be the barrier to success because of the way they present themselves, the way they operate in that space. So really, when you hear the term emotional intelligence, what comes to mind? What do you visualize when you hear that? Do you feel, well, have I got it? Am I good at it? Is it something, and as Francisca has said, it's a lifelong practice of something that you have to continue working at because it doesn't come automatically. And the test the questions around whether it is learned or whether it's something that is inherent, you're born with, is ably answered, which is actually something continuously that you have to learn. So really, to put it in a nutshell, as an individual leader of people, how can you create the type of environment in which people can thrive? It's something about psychological safety, and it's something I've been writing quite a lot about recently, about how people feel they can bring their whole self into the work environment and deliver the best work, and not being impeded by the environment and the people around them. So that's the one thing I'd like to say. You've had a definition of emotional intelligence, so I'm not going to go back and tell you what it is because you've come across. But one of the things I want to pick up is that it's one of the critical factor that distinguishes exceptional leaders from the rest of us. Someone who's emotionally intelligent knows how to navigate very difficult situations, whilst at the same time don't make other people around them feel lesser people. So the whole thing about emotional intelligence, it encompasses the ability to understand and manage your emotions, as was said to you before, but also managing your emotion. Although you cannot manage someone else's emotion, if you manage your emotion effectively, it enables other people to manage theirs. Because if you're throwing tantrums all around you, it does put the other person or the people around you in a sense of feeling discomfort, and they in turn might have to manage their emotions even more than you. So it might put them slightly off. So it's about managing your emotions. It's about managing the environment in which you work so that the people around you can feel they can operate effectively. Please do stop me at any point and ask any questions, because I notice that there are lots of people, but I like to hear voices when I'm talking. So leadership and EI and why it's important to consider. Let's look at it here. We had some reflective questions earlier from Francisca, but I think, are you usually aware of your feelings and why you feel the way you do? We've gone through this. Are you aware of the limitations, your limitations? And how many of us in leadership are willing to say to someone, actually, let's look at it from my work environment, where I come across a lot of leaders who tend to bear down on their staff, when really the problem is not the staff members or the direct reports that they're working with, it's about them. But they feel they're too high up in the organization to say, I don't know. So what they do is they push the person below them and say, you should know, but not, I don't know, and why don't we go out and find out how we can do this? They make the other person feel less skilled by making them feel they're not intelligent enough to actually know what they're supposed to do. And of course, any question? Yeah.
And Sherwin, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Leron. Very interesting. And I know that sometimes that is one of the weaknesses that many leaders encounter. But how do you convince yourself that you're at fault?
Well, actually, intuitively, you know when you're at fault. And the thing about, I like what Francisca said about, if you tell yourself a good lie, then you'll believe it anyway. So try to tell yourself a good lie. People intuitively know when they don't know something, because you either know it or you don't. You either know it's your fault or you don't. So I think a lot of the time you know it's your fault, but it's easier to leverage your position as a leader to say, you should know to a direct report, rather than, why don't we go out and find out? And I think that's the difference between a good, experienced leader who actually exercises a degree of emotional intelligence to recognize that it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know, because you cannot know everything. However, you need to be honest with people around you, because they know you don't know. If an experienced worker is working with you, they often know you don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yes, well, partially. The other part is that the difficulty, yes, you would be aware, because most persons would be aware when they are but to accept
Mhm.
that you are at fault. Persons are aware, but as you said, they try to push the envelope further as opposed to accepting that, yes, there's something I need to fix within myself.
Part of it is about asking for feedback and being open enough when someone says to you, actually, in our conversation earlier, I really think this was not about me. I think there is a gap somewhere in your knowledge that we can probably explore. I think the problem with junior members of staff, they feel a little bit intimidated when they have to speak, when they have to manage upwards, where they're speaking to someone, but they're worried that it might impact their progression negatively. So they often sit on what they really think. So a leader, it's incumbent on the leader to go out and get feedback from people and say, how does that feel for you? Me talking to you about that. Do you think I know enough about what you do to be able to talk about and represent you accurately? So the leader needs to go out and get feedback from people around them so they can build their knowledge base and build the gaps or I suppose in their knowledge. If you don't do that as a leader, if you're not open to exploring and developing yourself through the eyes of others, it's going to be very difficult. Does that address this bit of your question? Or?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. All right. So any other questions around that? Okay, let's move on. Mindful that it's getting late and we've been talking quite a lot. Examples of good EI at its center. Leadership, I suppose. Being open to, and we're going back to what I was saying earlier, being open to receiving feedback and using it as an opportunity for growth. So if you notice as a leader that there is something, there's a gap in your knowledge, you really need to go out and find out, because people are going to show you up in ways that experienced members of staff, because leaders are not always in an organization for as long as people who've been there for years. So a new leader walking into a space and pretending they know everything can find himself in a very precarious position, because the more experienced members of staff who've been there for a long time might actually make you feel quite uncomfortable in your lack of knowledge. So you really need to start from the position of, I don't know everything and I can keep myself open to learning. So feedback is very important. Adapting your leadership style to suit the needs of and personalities of your team. So if somebody said to you, you don't know something, I'll give you an example. I was coaching a senior NHS staff, a doctor within the NHS, because I do a lot of that work. And they were very worried about, they'd just taken over a practice and they needed to talk about budgets. They needed to talk about how the partners need to work so that they deliver effectively for their clients. But they were worried about being unpopular. They were worried about, that individual was worried about being seen as being actually too hard on the members of staff, and was worried about how they should come across, when really all they need to do is to learn how to have a difficult conversations, but being honest about it, saying to the person, this is going to be difficult. I'm open to listening to what you have to say, but it has to be looked at. So, but people, this member of this GP was very worried about how she was coming across, because most of her time was spent as a clinician working with patients. And certainly she had to now talk about leadership. She had to talk about other people, about priority, about budgeting, about survival of an organization, otherwise it dies. And if you know anything about the NHS right now, and you know that the NHS is in a transitional phase, and it's struggling because a lot of people are hemorrhaging. Well, the staff are leaving the organization quite rapidly because they're not getting what they had from it originally. So it's about being open to that. Recognizing and rewarding team members' efforts and accomplishment is very good example of leadership. Modeling emotional intelligent behavior and fostering a culture of understanding and support. And Francisca talked about that earlier, about modeling and recognizing. It's not something that you will learn automatically overnight, but it's about practicing it until it becomes part of who you are. So when somebody meets you, they will know that you're willing to listen. And I call leadership about humanization of conversations, because you're working with people. You're not working with models. You're not working with computers. You're working with human beings. And the main recognition that the person on the other side of the table is a human being is in itself a good place to start, because it means that you're recognizing that there are two people in the room, or there is a team in the room, and you're not just a leader, you're a person within that dynamic, and you need to be operating as that. And recognizing the importance of the other people on the other side is so important in getting the discussion and the respect that is required in leadership going forward. Any questions on here now or anything? Anybody's hands? Because I cannot see when hands are up. Am I missing any comments or anything that I should be responding to?
You're okay for now, Clive?
Okay, come on, people, you need to talk. I mean, I don't like quietness, otherwise I'll start singing to you. Next slide. So your leadership style, and I think it was mentioned again, as a leader, you set the tone for leadership, and you are often seen as a role model. So the question is, what climate do we create when you enter your space, the space of your team, your office, your group, the people you work with? What climate do you create? What climate do you work in? For example, when you walk into that team, how do you feel? Do you feel automatically comfortable? Or do you feel there is something about this space that just does not feel right to you? What are the leadership behaviors you see around you? Very often, if you walk into a space, you can automatically able to pick up some of the discomforts that other team members can pick up because they've been there for a long time. What does it feel? How does it feel? What behaviors do you pick up? What is it like to be on the receiving end of you as a leader, as a helper of people? And I think Francisco talked about the use of language about the less fortunate people, and what does it conjure in the minds of others when they are being told they are less fortunate? How does it feel to be on the receiving end of you? And that's the question I want to go back to. What conversations do you have about leadership with your team, your organization, with the networks that you have? But the question I want to reflect on here is, what is it like to be on the receiving end of you? And that is about self-awareness. It's being aware of how you project yourself. What do you bring into a space when you walk into that space? Do you bring a positive sense of assurance, or do you bring a sense of panic because people are worried that, oh, the boss is here. Oh my God, I don't know how to behave. Let's take a moment. Any comments here? What is it like to be on the receiving end of you? Anyone wants to take a chance on that question? What do people tell you about you when you've walked into an office, when you're leading? What do you hear from them?
We have a comment in the chat, Clive.
Okay, what does it say?
I try to keep my space friendly and open, although not always successful, depending upon the situation. Other areas, not always as open.
Okay. Anyone else? That's very, I mean, keeping open and keeping yourself open to possibilities of change is very important. Anyone else? I'd like to hear voices. Someone, come on, there are 95 people on this call. Someone needs to say something. Otherwise, I'm going to have to charge you for today's session.
And I'm not paying for it, Clive, so we'll
divide
by the number of persons.
They have to.
95 divided by $100,000.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anyway, it seems that we are totally quiet today. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, yes, Andrea. Go ahead. Hello, Andrea, you can go ahead.
Okay, so when I walk into the room, I'm told I walk in like a boss. You walk in like you own the place. You walk confidently.
Okay. What does that mean? Explain that to me.
That you're confident. Your entrance does make a statement. Positive statement.
And how
you feel the positive.
And how does that feel?
Positive vibes.
How do people feel when they see you?
Positive, happy, pleasant.
Okay, that's. I mean, I'd like to be in your team. Anyone else?
Yes, if we can follow on here, because it's interesting that Andrea says that when she walks into the room with that level of your confidence, she gets the impression that people calm, but you know it can be the opposite because
Mhm.
person can feel intimidated
Mhm.
and they might speak about that behavior when they're in their private spaces. So
Mhm.
sometimes we get fooled by having that perception.
Okay. So you're saying that somewhere there's a hidden agenda here. So some people might say they are happy to see you, but really privately when they go say, "Oh, that Andrea, when she comes in, she thinks she owns the place." God,
Correct.
what kind of person is that? But they're not telling Andrea that. So do you think Andrea's space is creating opportunities for people to come to her and says, actually, when you come in, it makes me feel quite good to be around you? Or do you think it stops them talking?
It stops them talking. That is my opinion.
What's your opinion? Okay. So how do you create the space for people to talk?
By I think it is from my perspective, by giving the persons the impression that you're approachable. I think some person mentioned earlier about having that friendly environment, but not only saying that you have an open door, but practicing the open door mentality where persons can come and share their thoughts openly. It's not something that you achieve, from my experience, not something that you would achieve up front, but persons will watch to see if what you intend is actually happening. And it takes some time to build that trust. That is from my perception, that my experience.
Okay. I mean, yes. I mean, I think, and you know, and we talked about one size fits all. Not one size won't fit every situation. It's because you need to know the space in which you're working, and then you adapt your behavior accordingly, so that it accommodates the audience that you have, because you're working with a range of individuals, and of course, you're going to have to alter the way you approach it on a day-by-day basis. So thank you, Peter Gay.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so I just wanted to expand on my comment. As I mentioned, I tend to have a open door kind of friendly space. So because of that, people do tend to come to me whenever they have problems, even if they're not in my section, just because I tend to go around, I tell everybody hi. And when you try to create that pleasantness around you, people tend to draw people in and make them comfortable with you. Unfortunately, there is a flip side to that, in that sometimes when you try to work with somebody and help them out of situations, it can sometimes be misconstrued that you are now favoring that person, because that has also come to me, where somebody's come to me with a problem and I'm working with them to help it, but now the persons that they're having the problems with now think that I am not with them anymore. So it's a double-edged sword, trying to keep a space friendly and open without no other persons thinking about that you are against them.
Okay. So it's managing relationships, both in terms of your colleagues, because you're helping someone from another team, and managing that relationship, but also trying to support that individual who's come to you so that you can be helpful. Is that what I'm hearing? So it's managing different relationships. Okay, thank you.
And Governor, you could go ahead.
Yep.
Break it up, Mr. Governor. You're having some feedback from your mic. Still there.
Okay, shall we go to someone else for now, and then we can come back to
we'll come back to you, Mr. Governor.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to respond to the third bullet. My leadership behaviors. I see my colleagues, my team members as family. I try to make connections with them. I feel that they are the ones that help the club to succeed. It doesn't all revolve around me. So I will do regular check-in with them. Sometimes I identify 2 or 3 persons on a weekly basis. I will just check in to see how they're doing. I value their contribution. I make sure that I don't let them think that it happened all because of me. But whatever it is that they do, small as it is, I value everything that all of my lions. I'm the current president, and I value everything that we can accomplish, whether it's just 6, 8, 12, lions at a time who can get it done.
Can I, a quick challenge, Gloria? When you say
Yeah.
you value, what does that mean? What does that mean? Let's deconstruct what you mean when you
Okay.
say you value that one.
Value, I place a lot of emphasis on success. So whatever it is that somebody can do, a lion can do, if there are 27 of us active members, whoever can contribute in any way to the success of a project, a service activity, I value that. I pay attention to it. I commend them on whatever it is that we were able to accomplish because they played a small part to get it to happen.
Okay, thank you. That's very important. Thank you very much, indeed. Jermaine. Jemima, Riley?
Good evening. I think in the leadership environment, one of the things that I've observed and experienced that works is when you put a process in that allows access to everyone, whether it's to give a suggestion or to make a comment, but a sort of an open environment that allows everyone to have this opportunity to communicate. And also to like ask them questions, who am I really? Because sometimes you need to understand who you are through the eyes of another person. So if you, like at meetings, you ask like an open question, when you see me, what am I like as a leader? And they know that you are really truthful and authentic in asking the question. It sort of builds an environment that allows for a number of things to happen that does not necessarily happen in another type of environment. Thank you.
So, okay, so it's being really authentically true to yourself and to the people by when you ask the question about how do I come across to you, really being open to take that feedback rather than making it an exercise, but not really interested in the response. I totally agree with that. Some people had their hands up, but they put it down. Is there any, okay, so Kalal, Dr. Kalal?
In terms of the audio?
Let's see, let's try it and see.
Governor. I don't think it's better than District Governor. Let's try again.
I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from. Anybody? So my question relates to Zoom. In this post-Zoom world that we live in, how does one navigate leadership and acting one's authority on a presentation when the order to place inanimate
we're not
That's a
getting you, line,
microphone
District
issue.
Governor. Yeah. So I suspect it's your microphone line, District Governor, because we're not hearing you at all.
Okay. Anyone else wants to come in while we sort out this technical issue?
I'd like to, if I may. Good evening, everybody.
Of course you may. Go ahead. Let me.
I don't know. I have dealt with working as a leader on the professional scope as well as in Lions. And I find that in order to be an effective leader, it is a twofold thing. It's one, listening, and also, I believe, creating a safe environment where people are comfortable to talk as well as listen. I think if we don't begin with that, then we'll have a false sense of leadership, because people could sit in an office with you and you're speaking to them about services or projects or what have you. But if they're really not connecting to you or even believe in whatever your ideal is or even what the club's ideal is, you just won't get cooperation. I've just been appointed as president-elect for my club, but I'm watching some issues that I already see, that people tend to shy away when they're not happy. So already I know that a healthy dialogue has to be held in order to help people feel important or just want to be part of something meaningful. And it's patience, and like someone said earlier, it's also self-evaluation of myself as a leader, making sure that when I ask these sensitive questions, I need to start preparing myself for the sensitive response. And I use the word sensitive response because sometimes people are not kind with their words. So that there will be a new challenge for me to try to cipher through one's pain or one's anger. You know, it's learning all these different emotional outbursts, for lack of a better word, and learning how to work around people's personalities as well as emotional behaviors. And
Absolutely.
the doctor said previously, it's going to take a lot on my part in order for me to become an effective leader, you know. So
No,
to be
absolutely.
honest
Can
with
I
you,
just
I
add one
listen
thing
to
here?
all of you.
Can I just add one thing you said? You said
Sure.
Making people feel important. But I think one iteration of that idea of importance of making people feel they've been heard, I think that's what for a lot of people, they want to be heard. And if they feel they're heard, then they will feel important in that happening. Okay, go ahead.
I know, I totally agree with you on that. But you know, to be fully transparent to what you all are speaking about tonight, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, oh, I've got a lot of work to do. And I've got till July 1st and to continue after that to really make sure that I'm in a good space, I'm in a healthy space, so that we can have the meetings of the minds and be free to have dialogue and move forward together. Because just because I'm a leader in title, I don't want to just be the leader. I want us to all lead in what's passionate to us, and we come together as one and we make things happen. So that's the
Absolutely.
journey that I want to get. That's the path that I want to get to in order to help build my club or
Okay,
our club.
fantastic. Fantastic.
So I thank everybody for their input. It's really helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And I think leadership is about practice. Leadership is about learning how to do things properly. I spend a lot of time running leadership groups and training for managers and senior staff across the NHS and private sector. And a lot of the time, it's about the type of conversation that you have, how you understand the conversation, and how you allow others to be part of the narrative so they feel important and they feel heard. Anyone else, or shall we move on? I know are we going back to
Yes, we're going back
Dr.
to
Carlisle?
Line District Governor, yes.
Hi, sorry, is this any better?
Much
It's a
better,
lot
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So my question goes to how do we navigate this type of leadership style in the post-Zoom era? And you know, in a face-to-face conversation, your presence, the way you present yourself, and all those attributes we've learned over time to make it work for when we're presenting and to bring our point or to sway the conversation. But when we're behind a Zoom screen, where we're not seeing the audience necessarily or feeling that readily feedback, it naturally makes us smaller or it draws us in. So we find that our leadership style adapts to that situation or it changes altogether. And sometimes you find that we become uncomfortable in how we perform or how we present our style. So do you have any tidbits to how do we maintain or keep true to our true leadership style in this post-Zoom era?
I mean, in the UK right now, what they're trying to do is use hybrid approaches to working, where people are actually encouraged to meet in person rather than doing the virtual conversations all the time. Because the one thing is that there is you, the other person, and there's the whole bunch of technology between the two of you, and that connection that you normally have in the personal space of another individual is missing. So the answer to that, I think, and you've more or less muted it in your conversation. When we used to meet in person, we were able to do it better. So perhaps where you can, meeting people in person is a good thing. But then the one thing about technology is that it democratizes communication. It democratizes people's involvement, because I am in the UK, you are all over the different islands in the Caribbean, and yet still we're having a conversation. So in some ways, it democratizes access. But I totally agree with you that sometimes the in-person conversation where the person is in the same room with you is important, because they can actually feed off from you. Does that answer your question, or does that give you some idea of what you're saying? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. It circles around it because I feel that when we present on Zoom, it changes that dynamic. Like even when you were earlier, you were asking for questions because your style required the constant feedback as you negotiate your presentation and how to see where to emphasize. So you were adapting as you went along. Not all persons are comfortable for that, and so the presentation then becomes boring or disengaging as people go along because they cannot manage or traverse the waters on Zoom. So I think a new leadership style will have to be created in this Zoom era where we know you're not seeing the other person, but how can you still bring across your alpha side? How can you still make your persuasive side be known without being over the top and so on? Because we learn to read body emotions as we see people, but in a Zoom screen you're not seeing, so you can't feed on that.
So what would you suggest? I mean, as a midway between, because I totally agree with you that the space of the individual occupying the process of occupying the same space with another individual is important, because you feed off each other, and I totally agree with you. And sometimes you have a persona when you're presenting online, which is quite different from the real person who you are. And there is also, and you talked about confidence, how confident an individual is when they are communicating using technology, so that they can come across in the way that they would like to. And some people can be ultra conscious of how they come across. How would you want to navigate around this to answer the question that you just posed?
Well, what I use that works for me is that in the conversational C, I find one person who I've made a relationship to prior to the conversation, and I make sure that the screen is on or something's on, and I project as though I'm really speaking to that one person and they're seeing me. So as I pose questions, I see their interactions. That helps me to still bring about the style that I have created as comfortable for me. So I think we need to identify, like the old school, find someone in the room that you can look on, fix upon, and make the way. So somehow in the Zoom C, we have to almost pre-navigate the C and say, like, find someone in the audience that you can link to, or put someone on who you're comfortable, you can keep their camera on, and at least you have that relationship that you can go. But I'm sure in this sea of people here, we can find some other comments that might be useful going forward.
Okay, so the point is actually having one of the key things is I'm asking people whether or not they mind putting the cameras on, so you can actually see the other person on the other end, but also creating that sort of close relationship with someone or some people, so that you feel you're actually having that type of personal conversation. Yeah. Stacy.
Hi, and good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yeah, I can
So,
hear you. Yeah.
I actually have this experience as a lion, and we have elections coming up, and I've been nominated to be the first vice president, and that person in our club has responsibility for leadership. But my experience is quite interesting because I spend a lot of time working in the maritime sector. So a lot of times when I'm engaging with other lions, I have to engage with them over Zoom. So one of the things that I really appreciate with my Lions Club is that they do a lot of one-on-one reaching out to me, where they send me one-on-one WhatsApp texts, or they call me in advance, to kind of, to prep me for, for certain things that might be coming up. And I really very much appreciate this. And I think this might be helpful to answer District Governor's question. When we're dealing with a Zoom era, we're gonna just like you said, it's going to democratize things and make people feel as if they're more involved, because it gives more people access to meetings and discussions and that sort of thing. But you're gonna find in your audience, there are gonna be people who are naturally extroverted and people who are naturally introverted. And how do you balance the two? How do you reach out to those persons who might feel like wallflowers, sitting down in a Zoom conversation and listening to people, and might want to give some feedback, but they're shy, or they might want to turn on their camera, that sort of thing. So I think that's something that people can consider. If you are in a meeting and you're not hearing from this particular lion or that kind of thing, reach out to them. Don't be ashamed. Make some time, call them. Ask them when it's a convenient time to speak with them. Reach out to them. Ask them. Hey, what did you think about this meeting, or what did you think about this this project that's coming up, and get their feedback that way. So in a sense, the Zoom era makes us work a little bit more. But I think it also would lend to developing one-on-one relationships a lot better.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on. Otherwise, we can spend the whole evening on this slide. But I really appreciate the fact that you have come across and you are now having a conversation with me. That's how I like presenting. I like having conversations. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So, range of leadership styles and approaches. We talked about directive, telling people what to do, and non-directive, really pulling people along with you, bringing them with you. All of these require emotional intelligence. However, what I think is that we need to be particularly careful when we are in the directive mode, especially when you're coming in, you're very busy, there's quite a lot to happen, quite a lot to do, and you're telling people what to do and what you want them to do. As a leader in many organizations, you're going to have to at some point tell people what to do if it needs to be done, because you are being measured by your delivery. So you're going to have to do that. So for me, it's about how you approach conversations, bearing in mind when you are asking questions and saying, how does it feel for you? What are the things we can do differently, rather than we have a number of things to do and I'd like you to do X, Y, and Z. So for me, the question for you is, where do you spend as a leader of people, and we're in the people profession, where do you spend most of your leadership? Is it in the directive space, or is it more up to the non-directive space? Where do you spend most of your time? Do you spend most of your time telling people what to do, giving advice, offering guidance, making suggestions, or is it about reflecting? Is it about listening and understanding? Is it about silence and allowing people the silence and the moment to gather their breath while they connect with the feelings about what is being said? Where do you, and I need some feedback from you, where do you spend most of your time as a leader? And in your helping profession, where do you spend most of your time? Is it down here? Is it up there, or is it somewhere in the middle? I'm not hearing any voices. So come on, I'm here.
For me, most of mine is closer to the directive, just because of sometimes the roles that I have to play, both in work, and then Lionism now is more closer to the non-directive, because I prefer helping to serve and helping people rather than giving orders. So I'm on both sides of the spectrum depending on my situation.
Where do you feel most comfortable?
In the middle, because I do like helping people and I like to listen while at the same time, directing persons for particular goals.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
I believe I'm more on the non-directive. And that may be my weakness, as my psychological test always tells me.
Okay, your weakness. Elaborate
Yes,
on that.
I'm always looking for win-win situations and trying to help persons as opposed to directing and telling.
Okay, so what do you feel you need to do? If you feel that is a challenge and present a potential difficulty, what do you need to do to shift to where you need to be? Not where you are, and where do you need to be to feel
to be able to find that happy medium. But also the challenge is always in your comfort level, because I tend to be comfortable at that end. So when I try to move to the other spectrum, I tend to get uncomfortable.
Okay, so it's not about where you are, it's how comfortable you feel challenging people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so as a result of today's conversation, what do you need to do? What do you want to do to address that?
I'm hoping to listen some more to see how you can find an answer towards that.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Lan Olivan?
Yes, good evening. I tend to lean a lot to the right, asking, and that is after many years, I would say, of practicing that kind of approach. With regard to the directive, I utilize that as well. However, I do that particularly when persons are new or a little more inexperienced, immature, and you'd want to provide a little bit more guidance. At the same time, moving towards making them less dependent, but to recognize that they need a little bit of hand holding, maybe in the initial stages. And I'm talking about whether it is in my professional life or my voluntary life.
Okay, so I suppose what you're saying is that you're taking a measure of the person who's in front of you and trying to see what support they need in order to know how to deploy your leadership style. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
My position changes based on the circumstance. I have been guilty of pushing because if I don't push, sometimes nothing happens. Or the pace is very slow. So I ask a lot of questions that raise awareness, that raise my concern that something needs to happen. There are times when I find myself on both ends. It depends on the circumstance.
Okay, I think I mean there's no need to feel guilty about being more directive. So is my time up? Sorry, I'm wondering whether or not I think we need to wrap up. I think that we've gone on for fun.
Yeah, I said we'll wrap up and then we'll do the question and answer.
Okay, let me wrap up. Okay, all right, thank you. So I think I've gone. Okay, so thank you very much for your contribution. The next slide would have been this one here about inclusive leadership and how we as leaders include people in the overall narrative so they feel at home. And I was going to talk about leadership and how it is like photography. But yes, and I've got some resources which I'll send to Francisca around emotional intelligence tests and linked to self-assessment around leadership inclusivity. So yeah, let's move to questions. Thank you very much, and I do apologize if I've gone on for too long. I'm enjoying myself too much. Okay, go ahead. Shall I stop sharing now?
That was the whole point, Clive, for you to enjoy yourself whilst you do it. So I guess at this point, there is no charge, right, Clive?
No, there's no charge. People started talking,
thank you,
so
Clive.
that's good.
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure. Yes, Clive.
I recognize, I think he only had 2 more slides to go. Can we engage him? Because
no, we can engage him if we want to continue.
No, I mean,
that's
let
okay.
him go through those slides, to go through those slides.
Yes.
Okay,
Clive,
you want me to?
Yeah, when I said wrap up, it didn't mean to stop. Yes. So the 2 slides, you could go through it. And what I would do, Lions and Leos, is to ensure that the information that is shared, and I think I posted it earlier, whatever information that is shared by Clive and Francisca, we will put everything together and I will pass it on across the district so that persons can have the information. So Clive, if you would.
Okay, let me see. I've already shut it down. So let me go and back into it, Now I think that is where I'm going to have to charge you because you're letting me work harder today. So
don't worry, the bill will go to Lion Showing. That's not a problem.
Okay, brilliant.
Never a problem. As your boss is not a problem.
Yeah, and you are my boss. Yeah, and then he is my direct boss, so that's fine.
Okay, all right, then that's good. So we hear that. Let me share my screen now. Just 1 second. Have I lost you? Let's see. Share screen. And can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can, Clive.
Okay, let me move on. So, and you cannot see my notes on here.
No.
Okay, so what we're talking about is about inclusive leadership and AI. Inclusive leadership is a critical capability that helps organizations adapt to diverse customers, markets, ideas, and talent. As leaders, I suppose we understand and how practicing inclusivity can significantly impact the team and the team's performance. If we have a mixed team, whether it's a team of men and women, team of different nationalities, teams of people from different countries and races, the importance of each individual feeling part of the overall narrative, where they can see their contribution to the overall success of the organization, is very, very important. So AI is one of the pillars of inclusive leadership. Understanding who you are, understanding your contribution, understanding the people with whom you work, understanding the environment in which you work. Of course, I mean, somebody talked about the Zoom culture, because post-pandemic, we're in a Zoom culture. Understanding the different changes that has happened is very important in order for you to deliver in that space. So, for example, the key questions to consider here is belief. Do you wholeheartedly believe that everyone is created equal? Whether each individual has equal ability to deliver in this space. Now, it may be that your contribution with each of the individuals is to support them and create the space and create the psychologically safe space where they can give the best of themselves. Very important to you as a leader to create that space where people can thrive, rather than where people come in on the Sunday before Monday and you're thinking, oh my God, it's Monday tomorrow. I don't want to be in that place anymore. You want to take that away. You want to give people the sense of being in the space where they feel they are being valued and they feel they can give their best work. Awareness. Are you conscious of both your conscious and unconscious biases towards others? What do you feel about different nationalities? I know we talk a lot about small islands and different islands have the competition, but do you genuinely believe that all of the people and all of the nationalities operate and can contribute equally to the teams that you have, if they're from different nationalities, different cultures, and being able to work and support people accordingly? The boldness. Are you honest with others about your shortcomings and misconceptions? So, for example, I think we are talking about the asymmetry between men and women when it comes to emotional intelligence, which is Francisco was talking about. Some women are more emotionally intelligent, whereas men were being so asymmetric. But then one of the things that she alluded to was that when you become a leader, there is a symmetric thing where people have to operate in a particular way in order to be a successful leader. So the symmetry is improved when you get to the top of the ladder, and you need to operate at that space. Curiosity. Are you open to learning and unlearning from others? Unlearning. As the profession that we are in, we spend a lot of time talking. We talk a lot. We say quite a lot. And I'm one of the callers talked about sometimes we say very insensitive things to each other. How can we spend time on learning some of the behaviors that we've learned over the years and learning the new ones where we are more in tune with our feelings and how the way we feel and how we operate can impact others? So being curious about us, who we are, how people operate, when people are on the receiving end of us, how do they operate? Do they operate to their full capacity, or have you closed their flame because they feel intimidated by you? They feel challenged by you. They feel that you're not supportive. What are you doing to make sure this happens? So the next one here is about leadership, and is like photography. As a leader, you have to have a vision and you have to have perspective. A skilled photographer has the vision of the final image in their mind. So they look at the picture and they're thinking, Pigeon Island. If I look at it, will I take both pics? And that's Pigeon Island. For those who are not from St. Lucia, do I take both pics, and how do I frame the picture in order for me to get the best view so that it inspires the person who looks at the picture and say, I really want to visit that place over there. This is really beautiful. as a leader, you need to see beyond the obvious. So when you look at a picture, being able to see things that other people cannot see and correcting it if it needs to be corrected. So great photographers always reveal hidden beauty or unexpected detail. And leaders also need to have that vision, being able to see beyond the obvious and speaking to your team about what's beyond the curve, what's going to happen next year. How are we going to manage with this budget? Are we going to get enough? Is it going to be clawed back? So about seeing beyond the obvious. It's about adaptability and flexibility. We talked about the Zoom era where people are now having to move communicating in person to via the virtual medium. How do we make the best of that? How do we adapt and how flexible are we? And we some suggestions around using preliminary conversations with people via maybe WhatsApp, speaking to them before you actually meet them in the virtual medium so that you develop a relationship. And it's interesting, what we are all talking about is about building relationships. Leadership is about relationships and fostering good relationships where people can give the best of themselves when they are with you and when they are working for you. Composition and collaboration, important with leaders again. Patience and timing, knowing when to make decisions, knowing when to tell people about the change that's coming, working them through the change so that they don't feel it's overwhelmed by the change. So it's really, in a nutshell, really, if we can say it in summary, both photography and leadership involves seeing, creating, communicating, whether through the lens or in the boardroom. The art of capturing moments and inspiring others shares a common thread. So next time you pick up a camera or you lead a team, remember, every frame tells a story and every decision you make shares the journey, shapes the journey. So you are shaping people's journey through their work life, whether we're having the new people entering the workspace and helping them believe that work is a positive thing to be involved in. That's very, very important. Any questions here? And before I move on, and finally, I think emotional intelligence, which I said I'm going to share with Francisca, and she can pass that on to you about emotional intelligence tests. And you can do a Google search, and you might find better ones than this one. And there's another one about how to assess how inclusive you are as a leader, and ideas on how you can improve that. There's a link to that as well. So these are my slides. Thank you for allowing me to get back to that. Can I stop sharing now?
Yes, you can.
Brilliant. Voila.
All right. Thank you so much for that presentation, Clive. And
You're most
before you,
welcome.
Francisca, I think the wealth of knowledge that has been passed on, we cannot deny that persons may have gathered, even if some of us are fully aware or partially aware of what leadership, leading with emotional intelligence or even emotional intelligence encompasses. I think you have educated us thoroughly. It's always said that one is never too old to learn. But ideally in the conversation, we spoke about a lot. And I think Lions and Leos, the time has come, and I remember having a conversation with Clive prior to this session. When he spoke about it, we were having a discussion and he says, sometimes it's good to take the camera and turn it on ourselves. And I think Lions and Leos, the time has come for us to take the camera and turn it on ourselves. We do know what our mandate is as Lions and Leos, which is to help the needy or to help the less fortunate. But when we put those things in context, and I think Francisca mentioned it, when we look at words like less fortunate, and we look at ourselves in terms of creating that level between ourselves and those we serve, we also have to consider that at times, we too are needy as Lions. I know of Lions who have gone through projects, whether it be after hurricanes, and their own roofs have been blown off. And we are not immune to that aspect of helping others. And so I think the time seriously has come for us to turn the cameras on ourselves. We need to pay very careful attention to how we speak to each other, how we communicate, how we interact, the level of respect that we show for each other, because we are all different and we each offer different perspectives. And I really like Lion Patricia, who spoke, I felt, from her heart in terms of being the president-elect. and what are some of the things that she's seen that she has to deal with. And we must be honest with ourselves. We must see what it is our clubs have in terms of whether it be the cliques, whether it be in terms of the unhappiness. And we must find ways to deal with that as leaders. Because I am telling you, it is more important to deal with your human resource, your membership, than to even think of doing a needs assessment in your community. And probably it's time, again, for some clubs that don't do it, that we start looking at doing a needs assessment for our own club, for our own membership, to see what people feel about certain things. Because ideally, we cannot serve the public if we do not take care of ourselves. And in the session this afternoon, we spoke about the self-awareness aspect. We spoke about the self-management. And one of the things I think Francisca also spoke about was, and we hear it very often, when you care for others, the caregiver is often very neglected. And we must make sure that we take care of ourselves mentally also. Sometimes it's not something that we like to speak about, but the mental toll it takes to go through some of the projects that we ourselves even do. We may think it's nothing. You go and you see a gentleman who's bedridden and who has no arms and no legs, and then you go home and you think, well, I'm over it, and you're not. And so we need to pay very careful attention to those sorts of things, because we are all human beings. We need to take care of ourselves. And once I made a comment, when it came to our own conventions and our cabinet meetings, and I'm hoping, in time we could go back full force. But those conventions and cabinet meetings and our media conferences should be about us. And that is my humble opinion. Because sometimes we sit there and we talk about diabetes and the work that we've done with diabetes, and we screened 100 people, and very good work. And there may be 10 persons within our fold who have diabetes and they don't even know. And so it's important for us to take that camera, like I said, and do some level of introspection and see how best we could kind of deal with each other on a level that we have a better understanding. We must be honest. So, Lion Patricia, I thank you for your contribution earlier, and I wish you the very best as president-elect. And so I'm not sure at this time, I know we've taken a lot of your time, so I'm not sure if anyone has any questions, but before we move on to the questions, I would want to give Lion District Governor and probably Lion Sherwin, who is the GLT for Multiple District 60, an opportunity to say a few words before we go into the question and answer session. If you would, Lion District Governor. Now, Lion Sherwin, go ahead, Lion Sherwin.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say that I believe that this session is very timely at this time. I know we're getting to the end of a session, but more importantly, we're preparing for a new set of leaders who will be taking the districts through for the next year. And some, as indicated earlier by Lion Patricia, some may be struggling as to how they're going to undertake this role and whether or not there will be persons would take the path with them. So I think listening to the two presenters, I think we have a lot of information where we can go and do some self-reflection as to how we can adjust our skills and how we interact, especially how we interact with our members and individuals using the information now we have on emotional intelligence to improve our interactions and our leadership styles. So thank you again, Lion Ron, for bringing these two remarkable presenters, and I hope we can get an opportunity again to interact with them because I enjoyed the session.
Thank you, Lion Sherwin. Lion District Governor, Lion Kala.
Lion Ron, distinguished land leaders and leaders in the audience, or to distinguished panelists. Thank you so very much for your wonderful presentations. I really enjoyed Ms. Palmer's presentation in the background. I even like the part when you say, think of a lie sometimes. I said, how funny, but it was really, really nice just to enjoy the conversations. I think it was timely because as we all try now to evolve more into how we see ourselves and present ourselves, and when we add Zoom now to the mix, it's so much different. As we struggle to get back out in person meetings and now take back the roles and the alphaness of our nature that makes us command an audience to present what we want to present. COVID has shifted a lot of that. So it's taken us back to the drawing board where we need to relook at ourselves, inspect ourselves, and see how the world has changed. So when we come to present, the audience is different, their perspectives are different, their minds, their stressors are different. So how then do we refocus them on what we're trying to sell? How do we get them to drink the tea that we want them to drink to make our impact more? As new lions evolving, as new Leos evolving, we're looking for new leadership roles. We don't want to repeat ourselves. So how now do we mold new minds into going down this pathway? So this conversation has opened many doors, as I think. And so as others reflect on their presentations afterwards and ask themselves, am I emotionally ready? When I present, is it the perception I want to present being received by the other person? How do I shy away from my negative attributes in my presentation, in my stance, in my being? So the doorway has been opened tonight. So I think we need now to reflect, repeat this presentation to get some more of the substance out of it, and then adjust how we look to see life and how we present in future. Bearing in mind, it's not only about intelligence or academics, but your presentation, your emotional side, your physical attributes being coming over. All of these are aspects now to what you're presenting and what you're selling. So we in the service community need to be very mindful of our population who we're attending to. So I think this has really opened the door for us. So thank you both very much. Thank the leadership team for leading us in this direction. And I said, I hope we can have an interactive event again where we can, adjust ourselves and then come and get scored, so to speak, how we have done and how we can now go forward again. So thank you once again, and continue to have a good evening all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lion District Governor. I would also like to recognize, of course, the other members of the GLT 60B team, which is Lion Norma, Lion Keisha, Lion Norval, and Lion Anne, who's always been very supportive and have taken part, of course, into these proceedings. I just want to say thank you to you and to recognize you as Lions who are making the effort to ensure that we provide some level of service to our members. At this time, I have also, probably for the third time, because persons have joined at different times, I've posted a link for an assessment for the workshop. If persons would kindly fill that out, I would really appreciate it. And at this time, I would open up for any other questions that we may have. Lions, Leos, the floor is open. I know you've spoken a lot. Any questions from anyone? Go ahead. Someone making a contribution? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, thank you very much, Lions, again. At this time, I would want to call on Lion Norval, who would do our vote of thanks.
Greetings and a pleasant good evening to everyone. First and foremost, we must give thanks to the Almighty for granting us the opportunity to be here, to be a part of this wonderful webinar session on leadership and emotional intelligence. Very timely. First, we would like to thank our GLT chairperson, Lion Ron Stevens, MGF, for his introduction of the session and the persons of the GLT committee that introduced our guest speakers or guest presenters, as well as his synopsis on the session and the honest feedback of what our clubs and movement endures in our leadership and emotional state. Thanks to Lion Keisha Small and Lion Dr. Ann Fenner, MJF, for their introductions of our guest speakers. Thank you to Ms. Francisca Plummer, who presented on the aspect of self-awareness as it relates to emotional intelligence. I must say, this was very interactive and down to earth and down to heart. Let us all reflect on the reasons why we decide to join the Lions movement, and are we looking after our membership while helping others, and about how we adapt self-management for our empowerment. Just remember, EI is something that you have to practice continuously. And more importantly, tell yourself a good lie. Thank you to Mr. Clive Averill, who presented on the aspect of empathy. We should ask ourselves, if we are aware of our limitations, as well as our personal strengths as a leader, and if we can manage our distressing emotional, as well as if we can adapt to the changing realities. Thank you for giving us examples of good leadership with EI as its center. One key question: what is it like to be on the receiving end of you? Let us ask ourselves this key question. Let's be honest with ourselves and others about our shortcomings or misconceptions. Thank you to our District Governor, Lion Dr. Carlisle Goddard, PMJF, for your input and words of wisdom. Thank you to our MD District GLT Coordinator for your input and advice on the topic presented. Most importantly, thank you to all the participants, both Lions and guests of the session. Without you, this session would not be as productive, fruitful, and beneficial to all of us as possible. On behalf of the GLT team of Sub-District 6CB, we would like to thank everyone for their participation and support. And we do look forward to seeing you and having you at our next training session. Just remember, leadership is like photography. Always give the best you do for yourself. God's blessings to all.
Thank you very much, Lion Noval. And of course, the person who normally gives the vote of thanks is not normally thanked. And so I would want to thank you, Lion Noval, for gracing us with those words, with the vote of thanks. And I want to say a special thanks to Francisca and Clive for the effort, for the energy, for the participation, and for making this afternoon session a success. And so, Lions, Leos, I wish you a good evening and may God bless you all. Thank you so much. Take care.
Person one, entity. One. What was from the beginning? This is a reading from the Word of God, written in the first epistle of John, chapter 1, beginning at verse 1. First John 1, verse 2. That's it. What is from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked at and touched, what we have looked at and touched with our hands.